Hey, so thanks for joining me on my cutting mat today. We're going to do a little Leanne's how-to of fussy cutting. So I love fussy cutting. I do it on everything. Fussy cutting basically means trying your best to, get a pattern central, get the lines straight. It's just taking that extra minute to spend it on the details. You can have an absolutely beautiful bag, but if the lines are off, it can be obvious. Nothing wrong with it, but it's nice when you can spend an extra 5 minutes just getting the detail in. Now, I've got a couple of different fabrics to show you my way, and I've also picked a couple of different pattern pieces. So, how you fussy cut will all depend on a combination of the two. Let me just put these to the side a second. So I've got this gorgeous one here, and this has horizontal stripes. And I've managed to bring over the biggest pieces ever, which is really helpful. Now, this one has actually been cut really well. Sometimes you'll see on the cut, and it can be cut in error, it can be print in error, many different things. The line will go skew-iffy. So one thing you have to accept with fussy cutting, there is going to be waste. So obviously save what you can to use elsewhere, but there is no way around. Fussy cutting does mean waste. So, right, you'll see on this side, my white line starts here, and then when I get to here there is a blue line. So if I took my pattern piece, it might not be as noticeable on a small piece, but on a large piece it might look off. Obviously I'm going to over exaggerate here because this is actually pretty good. I've had some shocking ones where the lines are real awful. So before I cut anything, I'm going to follow the lines. Now I'm just checking on my ruler. I'm going to follow this white line with this ruler and check on the bottom that actually, yeah, my ruler is following a white line, because sometimes the printing's off, sometimes it is just a wibbly wobbly line and you might spend ages cutting it. So just double check, yeah, my lines are following the whites, and then I'm going to trim it so it's straight. So I haven't cut too much off, so now it's straight. Now I know when I come to folding that over, I'm going to have nice straight lines at the top. You can also fold this back here and just double check. So obviously because of the nature of the wibbly wobbliness, it matches in some places and not others, but I know we are following a straightish line. If you find that up here it's straight, down here the print's gone off, what I would suggest is, if you're doing a tote, you're going to see the top more, so you want the straightest lines to be at the top. If you're doing something with a flap, make sure the bottom of the bag has the straightest lines, so you can still make it appear straight even if your print is off. Now this, like I said, this is pretty good. It's been cut really nice. So I'm all good for this one. I'm good to go. But I just follow the lines. Now let me just grab my next one. This one is obviously another ginormous piece. I never ever buy big pieces of fabric. Never do. Right, so this one has vertical lines. Now this one is nice and easy because you just fold it so that on your fold, so you'll see there I've only got a little bit of the pink there, and I've got a lot of pink up here. But if you just pinch one of the lines, there we go. So that line runs really nice and straight up my folded edge. You can kind of smooth it to help it work over. So if I cut that now, these lines, and I can see on the edge of my pattern as well, the lines are lovely and straight. Line fabrics are lovely and easy to do the fussy cutting on, and just making sure that things are good. My suggestions, especially with lined fabric like this, I like to interface mine first, because there is absolutely nothing worse than spending ages doing the lines and then having it distort when you're pressing. Especially if you're using a flat iron and you're doing this, you can distort the pieces. So I normally, I've got into the habit of interfacing everything before I cut things out. Plus that means you only cut once, instead of cutting, interfacing and then cutting again. So that's stripes. Stripes are super easy to do. And then we come on to the images. So again, if I was doing, this is the front of a bag, you need to find the center of your print. Now the awesome thing about prints like this is they are symmetrical. I can't handle non-symmetrical prints, but you can generally see that they are symmetrical. Now mine, as I was saying about distorting, you can see it's the center of the leaf, center, center, center. As I get down here, it's off slightly. So if I was using this as a big panel, I need to focus on what you see most of. So if this was a huge tote bag, I would make sure that the top bit is, you know, the focal bit is central, and I'm not going to worry about the bits at the bottom. Now what I would do is I've worked out that this is lovely and symmetrical. So as we did with the lines, you can fold this in half. Now you just need to fiddle around with it till you're happy that it's central. And we've already worked out that this bottom bit is off, so I'm not even looking at that. But I know that this was all even. Sometimes you can see through the interfacing to see that it matches, it reflects this bit on here. Technically it should, because it's a symmetrical fabric. How many times have I said symmetrical? Then I would lay my piece here and say, well, I want this most of this bird here in my bag. So if I put my pattern here close enough, I can see how much of my image is going to be on the bag, and that will be good. And I can go ahead and cut around that, and it'll be as good as we can get it. These type of patterns are easy enough to do. The fun comes when you've got something with a seam on it, like the harlequin pouch, and you want to fussy cut, say this owl, so that the print is in the middle. All the fun of the fair. You will have to accept that you're going to have waste, because you are going to cut most of this owl, and then you will need to cut most of another one, because we need to include seam allowance. So I've interfaced mine already. If you can't see through your fabric, you can pop some pins in on this side where the center lines are. So I'm just going to mark the centers of my print, which are roughly there. And I'm going to draw a line with erasable fabric marker. This is on the reverse, so it's okay. If I went ahead and cut here, it's all going to be wrong. So what I'm going to do is draw my seam allowance. So I've got three, I've drawn the center, I've drawn another one 3/8 to the side. I've gone this side because I've only got half an owl up here. So that one will need to be that way. So this one needs to be this way now. Need to decide where I want him. So I'm just having a quick look. Roughly there. And I'm going to use my second line as I draw on all my pattern pieces. Rubbish. So we've still got, this is now our stitching line. When we stitch them together, I grab some scissors. I love cutting out with scissors still. I find it really relaxing. There we go, so that is our first side done. Now for the second side, you can either if you can see through your fabric, you can lay it on top so it matches the print. That is absolutely fine to do. Now mine is a bit off, but I know that the center is the center. So I will do the same again. Find the centers. My center. draw my seam allowance. Now when I place this on here, I know I've got the centre. The centre's matching. Now you just need to be able to find the print. Obviously this is easier to do if you haven't interfaced, because you can see, but I don't like to think of everything moving out of place. Now that's the annoying thing about this print, because those lines match, those lines don't, those don't, that does, that does, that does. This is what I mean about, obviously it's distorted slightly. It's either done in pressing or in printing, but the only thing we need to worry about is that this centre line matches. So I know that this circle is the same, and this line up here, they match. Oh my god. Can't. Because the camera's in the way, I can't really get in there. There we go. Now they look a bit off, you know, got a double beak, but the important thing is that at the minute the prints match up. So in theory, when I sew them together, we'll end up with a beautiful owl. That is how we go about fussy cutting. Obviously, if you've got a print like this, you're going to need to spend a bit more time. And like I said, it's easier to see if you haven't interfaced, but now I don't need to worry about any of this shifting around whilst I fuse my interfacing. But that is how we do it. Easily peasily. Fussy cut all the things. Follow the lines where you can. Hopefully that was helpful. Ta-da! I thought I needed to show you my proof of the pudding. Now, in being totally honest and keeping things clear, I have unpicked this once because the seam allowance on the one side was actually slightly bigger. So what I did was, after I cut it, I just laid my ruler so that my 3/8 mark was central to that lovely central line we were talking about, and then I just recut my piece because the one was slightly out, but now it's lovely and matched. Obviously there isn't, I'm missing a tiny gap between the nostrils, beak nostrils, I don't know, but nobody would know. I think that's down to my machine seam allowance rather than my cutting. I'm still not used to my machine. I blame that. It's the machine's fault. But there we go. Obviously you don't sew this particular pattern this way, but for just showing you the fussy cutting, I just wanted to show you that it does work that way. So, ta-da! Now I need to unpick this once more so I can do it the right way.